Hello there. Today I watched Asteroid City and now I want to tell you about it. Asteroid City is a comedy drama that follows two different storylines. The first storyline revolves around a writer working on a play. The second storyline is the play he wrote, which follows a man and his family heading to the desert town of Asteroid City for a competition and seeing something there that changes their lives. It was written by Roman Coppola and Wes Anderson, with Anderson also directing the film. It's got a star-studded cast with some of the biggest names and faces in Hollywood from the last 30 years. Even the extras are working actors with decent careers. The first storyline follows writer Conrad Earp's experience writing the play and some of the events that took place during its creation. Conrad Earp, played by Edward Norton, meets with a young actor, goes to an acting school for ideas, and hires a cast and crew. We're taken through a bit of his journey and have it in a few other scenes from the creation of the play juxtaposed against the second story. The play is a fictional story about a grieving husband named Augie Steenbeck, played by Jason Schwartzman, taking his family to Asteroid City for a competition. His son Woodrow is being honored by the US government for his technological creation and is getting a chance to win a lump sum of money. The Steenbecks and the other families entered into the competition arrive, and during the general's speech to them all, something unbelievable happens that makes them all question their sanity. It also gets the government to quarantine them for a week, and in that time we get to see all kinds of wacky scenarios play out. The two stories play out in tandem, with certain actors from the play appearing in both storylines and dialogue from the writer's life directly addressing elements of the play. It's a complex story without a clear meaning that has a lot of witty, fast-paced dialogue and a lot of philosophical questions. There aren't any deep conflicts, just a bunch of little trifles between the different people quarantined in the town. A lot of the humor comes from the absurdity of the situation and from the jokes the characters tell. Most of it is fairly mild as far as the comedy goes, but there's a lot of it injected throughout. Little quips and visual gags to make you smile on the go. The story does a good job of fleshing out a few characters and giving them a little bit of growth, but everyone in the town is eerily similar. The children are all super geniuses, parents are all tired and run-down normal people, and the military people are all eccentric weirdos. Outside of the play, we don't actually learn much about the writer or the actors. Instead, we see snapshots of their lives that are meant to help explain parts of the play. It does a good job of making you ask questions and getting you to think outside the box, but the characters don't feel like real people. The writing is a bit of an oddity in that it both makes sense and yet doesn't, and it's also captivating but not very exciting. The story logically makes sense from start to finish except for the events that happen during the general speech. That event wasn't supposed to make sense, so it's okay that it doesn't. That said, I don't know what the story is actually about. I can take several guesses at it, and I can even give you evidence from the film, but the main point of the film is quite elusive. It can be a confusing experience, and everyone likely walks away with their own interpretation. So what makes sense to me might not make sense to you. It's also captivating to watch, but really we're just watching mundane interactions between fairly boring people. They talk about nothing in particular aside from the event, and their thoughts on the event aren't particularly deep. There's no big action, no big conflict, the humor is mild, and the closest we get to deep emotions is a brief moment between Jason Schwartzman and Scarlett Johansson that lasts literally seconds. It ends up being captivating through the actors' performances, which were incredible throughout the film. The cast is doing everything they can to add little bits of flavor to these characters at every turn. The general performance level is really high, and even the bit part characters are played by good actors. Like at one point they have Jeff Goldblum in here as basically an extra in the background. We hear him talking while the main character walks by, and he's giving off ungodly amounts of diva energy. Then he's just gone forever. He had one line. The standouts of the film are hard to pick because there are so many good performances here, but for me, it came down to Jason Schwartzman, Scarlett Johansson, and Bryan Cranston. Bryan Cranston plays the narrator of both stories, tells a few jokes, does a visual gag or two, and gives us all the context. He feels like a funny little sidekick that hangs out and fills you in. Scarlett Johansson plays Midge Campbell, and the actress who plays her. She's in both sections, playing an actress on the run in the real world and a famous actress in the play. As Midge, she's a bit aloof and well aware of the effect her stardom has on other people. She's brought her smart daughter to the competition to take part and ends up falling for Augie Steenbeck while she's there. Johansson pulls off the fast-paced dialogue with ease and manages to do a lot of great subtle emotional work while putting up a stoic front. Jason Schwartzman plays Augie Steenbeck, a widower and war photographer that's traveling with his kids. He's still grieving his recently deceased wife and trying to find a way to cope with it. When he meets Midge and the two hit it off, he initially seems happy, but after the event during the general speech, he seems to descend into a small form of madness. Like Johansson, Schwartzman appears in both the play and the writer's story. Outside of the play, he is confused about his character's motivations and tries to talk to the other members of the crew about it to get some perspective. Schwartzman nails the emotional moments and does a great job of presenting himself as two different people. Along with the other members of the cast, they work to create this weird, fast-paced, and interesting culture that discusses anything and everything under the sun. Visually, this film is quite distinct. It has two different visual journeys, and both of them are shot in different ways. First journey is the writer's story. It's shot in black and white with a smaller screen resolution and takes place on a studio lot with sets designed to look like real places. His room, the director's apartment, and a train. Then you have the play, which is in wide view and full color. Play is vibrant to look at, and the sets are real-life recreations of a 1950s town. Each and every part of it looks like a bygone era. The camera work is smooth with a lot of pans and a heavy focus on centering the characters and their conversations. Nothing all that visually spectacular happens aside from the event, and the visuals on that were more comical than anything else. I laughed a lot during that moment and during the repeated moment later in the film. The journey is nice to look at and it captures all the details, but it also isn't exciting. There's not much going on beyond the nice aesthetic. For a drama, there's surprisingly little emotion and there aren't any over-the-top comedic shots. It's just a nice and chill drama. Sound-wise, there is a lot going on to create a full atmosphere. They have emotional music and fun tracks for different montages, and almost all of it is era appropriate. It fits well with the scenery and does a lot of subtle emotional work. It tends to be quieter than most movies, but features a good variety of different genres and never overpowers the scenery. It doesn't stand out though. The visuals and the story never really come to any big moments, and so the music acts like an emotional anchor, providing a stable base to work off of, but never taking the lead. Overall, I really enjoyed Asteroid City, but I had a hard time understanding why at first. The story doesn't have a clear meaning to it, there aren't a lot of emotions, and the humor is mild. That said, the strange characters and the conversations were a lot of fun with their back and forths. The visuals are amazing to look at and create a wild contrast between the two stories. The music was interesting and fun too. It was just a fun experience, even if it didn't mean anything. It is kind of missing that pizzazz factor in the visuals and soundtrack, but aside from that, it's really interesting. It also tries a few different things visually and story-wise that are quite a risk. 7 out of 10. Remember, these are just my thoughts on the film. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Bye-bye.